Welcome to Midnight's Edge Talking Horror. I'm Tom Connors, and this is the 4th annual Alien Day, so we have a special edition of Talking Horror for you. With us, as always, is Andre. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing excellent. Greetings, everyone.
And our very special co-host, who is a bit of an alien expert, I guess, Mr. H. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very, very good. Looking forward to this podcast, actually. I think this will be a good bit of fun for everyone today. And also, as well, just to say from the top, I think I forgot to say this, it's also the 40th anniversary of Alien. So it's not only the 4th Alien Day, but it's the 40th anniversary this year as well. So it's quite a special time, I think, to be an Alien fan. I think nothing better than for us all to take a look at the entire franchise and kind of discuss them, review them, and then talk about them moving forwards, because again, that's something which is uncharted territory currently. I'm sure you guys have touched on it before in some videos here and there, but obviously the Disney Fox deal, which does cover Alien, which a lot of people seem to be unaware of, but I think this will make for an interesting discussion.
Absolutely looking forward to it. So let us get into it.
So I touched on this as we were just discussing at the start. What we're going to be doing today is taking a look at the entire franchise, and what better place to start than Alien, the 1979 cult classic, I guess, a movie which realistically changed the landscape of sci-fi. Not specifically sci-fi, but more how it's received by audiences and how studios handle sci-fi. And also sci-fi horror, because a lot of people are not aware, and we'll be touching on a little bit of trivia, but just to kind of whet your appetites, Alien was essentially a B-movie flick at best. That's what Fox considered it, and now it's this juggernaut of a franchise. So I think we'll discuss Alien first. We'll just take a look at it, discuss our almost a retrospective review, I guess you could say. But Andre, Alien, what is your thoughts on Alien?
I love it. It's easily one of my favorite movies and my favorite of the franchise. I know many prefer Aliens, but to me, Alien is the best of them. And the reason why I like that movie so well is the tone. It takes its time to build an atmosphere, like just that introduction to the movie. Before anyone wakes up, just a look at the pods and how this is shot and filmed in a style reminiscent of Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. I absolutely love it. And then later on, they take that tone, that cold, sterile tone of a beaten down, worn down environment, and then they add horror elements to it. And I think it works fantastic. And to me, that is the highlight of the director's entire career.
So I think what's potentially interesting there, and this will maybe be a good discussion for everyone, further down the line. But you said that you prefer Alien over Aliens. Which one did you watch first?
Aliens.
So you watched Aliens first, but
Yes.
you prefer Aliens. See, that's really interesting. All right, well, again, spoiler alert for a conversation we're going to have further down the line. I watched Aliens first, and I prefer Aliens. So we're going to have to hash this out further down the line.
Yes, we'll get to that.
But Tom, thoughts? Alien.
Alien is, as you put it, a very interesting film in a sense that it's more like a horror movie than it is a sci-fi, really. It's set up like a slasher film. It plays out like a slasher film. And it works. It's amazing. The visuals are great. At the time, it has the Jaws factor going for it with the alien. We don't get to see a lot of the alien, and that makes it even more creepier and scarier, especially before we finally get to know what the alien really looks like for the first time, if you're somebody seeing it for the first time. It's arguably, in my opinion, Ridley Scott's best film. I'm not the hugest Ridley Scott fan, I'll say that up front here.
Oh, guys, there's the dislikes coming in now.
I like him in certain aspects, but I'm one of those that I feel like he gets a lot of overhype. So
You don't want to get me started on that one.
Well,
Yeah.
in fairness, that is something which we're going to touch on in trivia, because I think that's where we can actually dispel some myths about Alien
Right.
and also Ridley Scott's involvement in the film, which is super, super important. But I think you touched on something really interesting there, Tom, actually, is that you said kind of first and foremost that it's actually a horror rather than a sci-fi. And I think you're actually dead on. I think sci-fi is just its setting. That's just where you are. You're in a sci-fi setting, but it's not inherently a science fiction film. It is a horror film with a science fiction setting, and I think that's probably why it did so well, because it resonates, across board. Obviously not only its visual style being exceptional, and just incredibly engaging and compelling, but it is that. It nurtures that horror aspect to such a high degree.
It was originally written to be speaking of trivia, wasn't it originally written to be for like a Corman movie?
Yeah, but it was originally titled Star Beast. So I mean, I guess what better time than now to crack on with trivia. Dan O'Bannon is the chap that did this screenplay, and he nurtured this film for years. It was Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett. They worked together on this film over many years and kind of refined it. And interestingly enough, and I think this is where we can really kind of get into the meat of the whole Ridley Scott issue, is that Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett really deserve most of the acclaim for Alien, and I know a lot of people will probably hate on that, but Dan O'Bannon worked with H.R. Giger. It was his involvement with Giger which got him involved in the project first and foremost. All of the core ideas were actually there before Ridley Scott was signed on as director. So a lot of the most iconic elements, so say the space jockey, which now we know as the engineers, that was already in place. That was already a concept which was there. Whether it was from Dan O'Bannon, Ronald Shusett, or the producers, David Giller and Walter Hill, most of the main core elements that most people still talk about today was actually in place prior to Ridley Scott even signing on and attaching himself to the project, because again, this was a B movie. This was a project which no one really wanted at the time, and Ridley Scott was brought in quite late in the game.
Does not surprise me in the slightest. What I have to say about Ridley Scott, and here the dislikes are going to be coming in, is that I think that he would probably be a better cinematographer than director. He specializes in creating pretty pictures. As I said, Alien looks fantastic. All of his movies look fantastic. But the only ones of his movies that are actually any good are the ones that had a script in place beforehand. If the movie had a great script, then he delivers a great movie. If it didn't, he's gonna deliver something which is many different things, but certainly not great. And even when he has a great script, he still can't get an edit down. Like, how many edits are there of Alien? How many edits are there of Blade Runner?
Yeah.
And how long does he keep them going? And I know that sometimes you have disagreement with producers and everything like that, but still, this is something that keeps recurring. And when you have the movies where basically he is a hired gun, the script is written, is based on a book, like The Martian, for instance, he does fantastic. But when it's a story that he develops himself, like Prometheus, which we'll get back to later, the results are a little bit...
Yeah,
I agree, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ridley Scott is, first and foremost, a cinematographer. And no one can deny that. His work as a cinematographer is astounding. So all of his films look incredible. But you can't have style over substance. And ultimately, substance has to carry a film. So I think you're completely right. With that, and I think that's an important element to the equation here when we're talking about Alien and the whole development of it, because there is actually a documentary which was running around film festivals this year, late last year, which was exploring, I think it was called like Alien Origins or something along those lines. It's not released yet, but maybe there'll be an announcement on Alien Day. But it was a documentary exploring the real production of Alien, and it dispels a lot of these myths, actually. So, don't have to take our word for it, guys. There's a documentary out there which is endorsed by Fox. So you can go check that out, and that will, again, kind of tell you a lot of these things, which we'll just reiterate what we're saying today. So, Tom, I mean, obviously we had your review, but you didn't say whether you kind of where you rank Alien. Obviously, we got a brief bit of that from Andre, but where do you rank Alien?
I am one of those where Alien and Aliens is kind of like The Godfather and Godfather 2. It depends on my mood and the day.
Okay, all right, interesting.
But normally, which is odd because normally I will go with the first Godfather over the second one, and sometimes I will go with the original Alien over Aliens. But as far as an overall movie, story, production, everything like that, I generally, if I'm going to sit down and pick one and have to watch one, I'll pick Aliens. So that's probably a perfect segue into the sequel.
It is, but also, and then we'll touch on this later, which one did you watch first?
No, actually, Alien 3 was the first one I saw, interestingly, but then I went back and watched them in order, so...
Okay, all right. Well, it adds some interesting fuel to the conversation we'll have a little bit later. So let's chuck on now to Aliens, a movie, obviously the sequel to Alien, a very inventive name, Aliens. A movie which came out nearly, 10 years after the original? Close to, anyway, in 1986, by none other than James Cameron. For me, I'll just give you my brief review, because I didn't really touch too much on
They'd call that a
Alien.
reboot now.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, they probably would, to be honest. Or they could just call it The Alien, because that seems to be a thing which everyone does now with their sequels.
Right. It was almost like what they do now, but then. It was almost like they did that ahead of time. It was ahead of time.
They're going to save that for the eventual Alien reboot, the actual one.
But yeah, oh god. Anyway, right. So, Aliens, because I didn't really give my review of Alien, but Aliens for me is my personal favorite. It is my personal favorite. And interestingly enough, Andre, this is where we differ, because I saw Aliens first, but I prefer Aliens to Alien. So it's interesting how my introduction to the franchise and your introduction to the franchise is the same, but our opinions differ on it. For me, I think Aliens had everything. So it had everything that the original had. It had the intense horror. It had it had plentiful action, clearly, being a near allegory for Vietnam, and it also had that expansion to the mythos, which is where a lot of people seem to dislike it, because they dislike the fact that the creature itself has kind of developed into something which was unintended by the introduction to the series. Became a bug, basically, the actual term which they use in the movie itself. But to me, I think it was just so masterfully put together. The use of miniatures was fantastic. And again, that's something which the first one had. I don't deny that either. But I personally do think that Aliens it's one of those movies which had everything. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Henriksen's performance. What a fantastic performance.
Oh yes, that movie made me a fan of Lance Henriksen.
So, I mean, what are your thoughts on Aliens, Andre?
Well, I also love the second movie, Aliens. That was my first introduction to the Alien saga. I first saw the theatrical version of Aliens on TV, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I absolutely loved that movie. But when I later saw and I really absorbed Alien, I liked that more anyway. Even after I saw the director's cut version of Aliens, which is my preferred version because it is the complete movie, I still prefer Alien, the original one. You know why? Because the original movie has one thing that Aliens does not, and that is exploring of a mystery. It has that first introduction to Lovecraftian horror. You enter into the unknown. It's the first contact with alien life, with the derelict ship and everything. That sense of mystery and wonder and horror was missing from Aliens, because Aliens is a very different movie, and it's an absolutely fantastic movie, and I rank the two very close together, but still just that mystery aspect of it leads me to rank Alien just that tiny little bit higher. That being said, Aliens to me is a fantastic movie, and I see it in much the same way as I do Star Trek Wrath of Khan, which do the same thing in some sense, because like the original Alien, Star Trek the Motion Picture is also relatively slow and many would say boring. I completely disagree with those of you who feel that, but still, all other comparisons aside, one was a slow-paced original and the other was fast-paced, much more action-oriented driven sequel, which today also would have been called like a soft reboot, and both worked. So I appreciate both movies very, very much on their own merit, and I absolutely consider one the perfect sequel to the other, and I wouldn't have had it any other way.
It's interesting you say that. In fact, Empire magazine did vote that Aliens was the greatest film sequel of all time, so that's quite comical that you mentioned the kind of sequel element there. But Tom, I mean,
I would be inclined to agree with that, actually.
Yeah, I think I would as well. In fairness, it absolutely stands up. As well, I think it's important to note, like, it stands the test of time. Like, if you watch it now, it's still timeless. And again, Alien is as well. They are both very timeless films in how they feel, how they're shot, even the effects. I genuinely believe that they are both very, very much a timeless product.
I have to bring up one thing though before we move on, which has to do with trivia, but it also has to do with the timeless aspect, because I agree that the movie itself is timeless, but there is one unfortunate thing that ties it down to the time in which it was filmed, and that is in the mid-80s, all the film stock that was used was garbage, which is why all the movies then today are grainy as hell.
I see his character.
Yeah,
I don't mind grain, but I get what Andre's saying.
Yeah,
because even the Blu-ray looks.
You can say that it adds character, but actually it's an unnecessary byproduct of the shooting process, which is unnecessarily elevated. So that's a peeve that I have with both Predator, the original one, and Aliens. Those two in particular, that movies filmed in the 60s look better because they were filmed on better film stock.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that is unfortunate with the timeless aspect, because that will forever tie it down to like mid-80s. But other than that, where the movie itself is concerned, I agree, timeless.
And Tom, what are your thoughts on Aliens, the best sequel of all time? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, of course, I didn't get to watch Alien until later on until I was a little older, and it had already been, Aliens, like everybody, it was like this built-up movie, and it lives up to the hype. From what I recall at the time, though, when it would have come out, James Cameron really had only been known for Terminator, and Terminator was a hit, but I don't think it was the big hit that everybody remembers it was when it first came out. I think that movie simmered and grew over time, and the anticipation for 2 built up. I think Aliens was the movie that kind of put James Cameron on the map. And not only that, I know it got nominated for some Oscars, considering like Sigourney Weaver did for Ripley.
Yeah, some sound effects as well.
So again, Andre made some comparisons to Star Trek and Star Trek 2. I also like my comparison to Godfather and Godfather 2, because I feel the same way about these movies, and the Star Trek analogy is also good, because Aliens, again, to kind of just reiterate what you guys are saying, it took what the first film was and completely reinvented it in a way that worked, because 9 times out of 10 when you go that far from the mothership, you're going to basically just fall flat on your face.
Great
you don't
analogy.
always want to and then you don't also want to do the same damn thing all over again.
Yeah.
which is what we'll get to when I get to Covenant. But anyway, because then it's just, okay, I've already seen this. Next, it managed to do so many things in one movie that it deserves all the credit it gets. This is one of those movies that it is not overhyped in any way, shape, or form. The effects are solid, the acting's solid, the story's solid, and I don't even think it really messes with, I don't mind. I always kind of saw the alien as a biological weapon anyway, so the bug analogy doesn't really change my point of view at all.
No, neither me. It's something which I can see it, but I don't get it. I can see the hate for that, but I don't get it.
Again, and to me, that's like, if you're gonna have a biological weapon like that, of course it's gonna spread like a bug.
Yeah,
that's what you want it to do.
Exactly, like a virus, right? It's kind of the point.
So yeah, that's my feelings on it. And like I said, any given day you ask me, I mean, usually though, pound for pound, Aliens is the better movie, I will say.
All right. So I mean, I think it's important now, watchers of Talking Horror, I would be keen to hear all of your thoughts. So sound off in the comment section down below why you prefer either Alien or Aliens. I'd like to get a bit of a census from our viewership at Talking Horror here. I think that'd be interesting. But whilst you guys are doing that, let's move on to Alien 3. Yeah. I think we'll lead with you, Tom, because you watched this one first, my man. So you can crack on with this one. Give us your review.
Well, Alien 3 just happened to come out at the right time for me, in a sense that I was getting into horror, and a friend of mine who was introducing me to horror, Alien 3 happened to come out, and that'd just be the movie he rented that day. I had not seen the first two. He gave me a quick rundown and got right into Alien 3. And for the time, I get some of the hatred and displeasure that movie gets. But being that was my introduction, I guess I don't have that stigma attached to it. So I do enjoy the third film for what it is. And if the movies were to end with 3 and it was just that little trilogy, I'd be fine with that. Okay. 3 took it back to the darker roots, in my opinion. I actually kind of like the director's cut they did for the DVD and Blu-ray. It does make the story a little bit more interesting in some aspects, and bring the bull alien back and all that kind of stuff. So I like, because that was kind of my introduction to the series, was also the same time that they oddly were doing toys.
Yeah.
So I remember getting a few of the toys at the time as well that were kind of attached to that whole thing. And that was kind of, and then from there, when I just bought the trilogy and I watched 1, 2, and 3, and I fell in love with the whole series. And of course, I loved 1 and 2 more than I did 3 after watching them finally and seeing them. But to me, I guess 3, I wouldn't rate it nearly as bad as a lot of people do, even though this one has a very, very storied history.
Yeah, we'll touch on that for sure.
And I'll this might lead you into either Andre or whoever wants to take over. I do recall the very controversial ad campaign for this movie that basically promised this one was going to take place on Earth, and it didn't.
Yeah, it's such a troubled production. Really, we'll save that for some trivia, because I also have some other bits of trivia to go with that.
But I'm assuming neither one of you are as like this film as much as I did. But
well, I mean, Andre,
wants to kick it off. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I actually didn't even see Alien 3 for the first time until I saw the director's cut version, or the extended cut, or whatever it is, the one that restores the cow and everything. Maybe I don't know at the time. The one that was released on like this first epic DVD collection. Yeah, that was actually the first time that I saw the movie. And before seeing it, I had heard that the movie was such a piece of crap and everything like that, so that I reduced my expectations to the absolute rock bottom. I was expecting this to be garbage, and I decided that, okay, I'm not going to waste my time on the theatrical cut, because my experience with the first and the second movies, the ones that I actually had seen before, in both director's cut and the theatrical versions was that I preferred the director's cut and the newer versions of them. So I'm going to go straight for this new version, which is closer to what the director wanted. So I popped in that disc and I saw the movie, and relative to my lowered expectations, I was blown away. I didn't think it was bad at all. Of course, it's nowhere near the first two. It really isn't. And it's like such a cop-out with what happened with the surviving characters from the previous movie. But still, the movie on its own, in the assembly version or whatever it is, I thought it worked fairly well for what it was. Of course, if I could go back in time and make myself into a Fox executive, I would have made a very different Alien 3 than that one. But given what movie there is, I like it. I think it's fine. And I, to this day, still haven't seen the theatrical cut with the dog and everything.
I mean, the theatrical one's fine. I think it's interesting you say about the assembly cut. David Fincher actually wasn't involved in that at all. He wasn't involved in the assembly
he had
cut.
such a shit experience. He wanted
they
he's
reached
just
out to
disowned
somebody.
it.
Yeah, he decided not. He
He's
said
disowned
no.
it completely. It's had, but the interesting thing, again, my thoughts on Alien 3. I quite like Alien 3. In fairness, like for all of its downsides, I quite like Alien 3. I think it's good. Something which you mentioned, bringing it back to its kind of horror roots, kind of gritty, grounded, a bit more claustrophobic, that sort of thing. I really like it, but I think the most fascinating thing about Alien 3 is just how bad the production was. A little known fact, a bit of trivia for you guys, is that Pitch Black, that was actually an Alien 3 script.
Really?
For anyone that doesn't know, that was.
I had no idea of that.
But just think about it. Remove those creatures, put aliens in.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
And then,
I have to say,
the kind of badass characters, remove them, put back in your alien characters. And then not only that, a lot of people, I mean, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but the bizarre wooden monk world, you ever hear about this? That was one of the previous scripts.
Yeah, it was like a planet built of wood.
Yeah, and they actually built the sets and everything. It was all kind of like ready to go, and then it was all crashed at the last minute. It's such a Fox, and again, I'm sure you guys have covered this, and I'm sure we'll cover it in future. But Fox have a storied history of bizarre micromanagement on productions, and no doubt this was another element of that.
Well, yeah, and you also had Sigourney Weaver as an executive.
Again, guys that are listening to this, guys and girls, don't want to assume anything here, but guys and girls listening to this, your thoughts on Alien 3 would be much appreciated, whether you prefer the assembly cut, whether you like the original, and just overall any snippets of trivia which obviously we can't get to it all today, we've got to cover quite a lot of movies, so again, drop them all down below in the comment section. But moving on, let's discuss Alien Resurrection. And I'll just cut straight to Tom again, my man. What do you think to Alien Resurrection or Alien 4, the 1997 smash hit? And yes, I'm being facetious because it's garbage.
It's one of those movies where there's elements of what could have been a really cool sequel here, but at the same time it's just one of those movies where that they're just trying to cash in.
Yeah.
And I knew it when it came out. I didn't bother seeing it. Did I see it in the theater? I don't even remember if I saw it in theater, to be honest with you, 100%. I'm trying to remember now. I may have, but if I did, it was that unmemorable that I don't remember buying it until it was in a box set. Let's put it that way. So,
Or a shining
it's got a
review
great
from you
cast.
there, Tom.
It's got a great cast. Unfortunately, that's about the best I can say about it. It's got a great cast. Got some elements that could have been great if they worked. That last portion, though, that hybrid baby thing. Spoilers.
I think it's a given we're going to be doing spoilers today. I don't think we need to make them known.
That is the worst thing. until we get into like the Alien versus Predator I've ever seen in this
dear.
franchise. It was where this franchise officially jumped the shark.
Yeah. So I can sum this movie up, right, in very little words. It is a 90s film through and through. It is quintessentially 90s. That's all you need to know. Like, if anyone knows anything about kind of different time periods and things like that, this is a 90s movie without a shadow of a doubt in all senses of kind of the turn of phrase there. And that's my review. I'm not even going to say anything else on it because it's not even worth the time. But I had some cool shoes. I had New Rocks in it, I guess. If anyone is familiar with New Rocks, had a great set of shoes, boots in it. But Andre, your thoughts on Jean-Pierre Jeunet directed Alien 4?
Well, let's begin with the nice stuff. There are some very good scenes in it. Like, I really liked how the aliens looked in it. Like, for instance, the one issue that I have with the first movie is that when you saw the alien in full body, it was very obviously a man in a costume, whereas in this movie there's plenty full-on alien action, which isn't necessarily a good thing. But what is good is that it's very clearly an alien. There's no human inside of there. Well, there was, but it didn't look like it.
Yeah.
So I'll give it kudos for that. And there was a good, really good cast, and Ron Perlman even threw in a reference to Quest for Fire, which was one of his first movies, if not the first, and one of my favorite movies of all time. So the movie gets plus points just for that. That's good, because those are the only plus points the movie's gonna get. Because other than that, it was a complete and total dumpster fire that utterly destroyed the brand, in my point of view. Yeah. Little did I know when I saw it that things were only going to go downhill from there.
Yeah. Well, let's touch on that. No, actually, hold on, because a bunch of people will be saying this. Why are we not talking about AVP? So, just look, for whatever you believe is canon and all of this kind of stuff, the latest Predator installment has aligned the AVP movies with the Predator franchise as canon. The sort of canon status of AVP in the Alien universe is very muddy. So we're not going to touch on them, but just for all intents and purposes, I don't like them. I don't think Andre likes them, and I don't think Tom likes them. So correct me if I'm wrong, but
the first one's serviceable enough. I can watch it. It works for what it is, I guess. But again, you can't really watch it as an Alien movie. Yeah, it's the uncut version, of course, is much better than that PG-13 version we got in theaters.
God damn it.
Yeah. Other than that, though, it's kind of fun. It's a fun little like what if kind of movie. But yeah, then you get to the sequel, and that was just.
About Alien versus Predator, I have two things to say. First, as you said, Mr. H, the thing to consider this is that you have to consider Alien and Predator as two different franchises. And within the Alien franchise, the Predator movies never happened. The Predators don't exist.
Yeah.
Whereas within the context of the Predator franchise, Alien does exist, and the Alien movies did happen.
Yeah.
Or will happen. Complicated, I know, but really that's the only way to make heads or sense of this. So the AVP movies, they are definitely a part of the Predator franchise, but they never happened where Alien is concerned. That being said, I was so hyped for AVP when it first came out.
Whoever wins, we lose.
Exactly, but never mind that tagline, because I had read the Dark Horse comics on which the movie is loosely based, and those comics were, as you say, absolutely fantastic. And the original intention, of course, was to film those comics.
Yep.
And if you had filmed those comics as they were, that would have bridged the gap between the Alien and Predator franchises perfectly.
Yeah.
Then you could have considered them part of one cohesive universe. You absolutely could, if they had gone with a straight comic book adaptation, which is what they should have done.
The storyboard's all there.
Unfortunately,
Storyboard's there. They should have done
exactly. The whole
Such a
movie's
shame.
there.
Yeah.
You don't even need a script. You can just film the whole thing as is with literally no changes, and you'd have the best crossover movie ever.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was there.
I firmly
Unfortunately,
agree.
Tom Rothman was running Fox at the time, and as we've reported before, he mandated that the movie had to be set on Earth, and it had to be set today of the movie, which was made in 2003 for release in 2004. So it had to be set in 2004, which then wreaks all kind of havoc with the Alien continuity. So that's out of the window. And even with that setup, because then you have like the pyramids under Antarctica, and that's such a cool concept. You could have done so much with it. Like, that's straight from Lovecraft. Not only is it straight from Lovecraft, you could have read some Graham Hancock and put some Graham Hancock in there.
Yep.
You could have made a freaking incredible movie out of it. But instead, under the direction of, or under the production or oversight of management of Tom Rothman, and under the direction of Paul Anderson, they just messed it up. They messed it up so completely and utterly. I was so disappointed by that movie. It had so much going for it, but they just wrecked everything about it. And for the sequel, they wrecked it even worse, because then they took it from the Antarctica, which was bad enough, to suburbia, which there they found a way to top it. And then for the Predator, years later, they did that again, which is... I can't believe it. But yeah, I did a separate post-mortem on that movie, so yeah. Basically, long story short, can't stand the AVP movies. Massive waste of opportunity.
Yeah. Just to, I guess, just quickly chime in as well. Like, I think you touched on it really, really nicely there, is that the Dark Horse comics are fantastic. They are, they're not to everyone's taste, I'm aware. But to anyone that, has read them, 9 times out of 10 people like them. And that could have been directly adapted, and it's such a shame. But anyway, moving away from, the kind of crevice of crap that is the AVP movies, onto something which many people consider going into the canyon of crap. We'll discuss Prometheus now.
Before we do that though, one little trivia thing, which I can ask you for the definitive answer on, since you're the authority on all things Alien here.
Oh, don't build it up.
I have always heard this rumor that the Alien movies, they do not share continuity with the Predator movies, as we've established. However, do they share continuity with Blade Runner?
You sly bugger. No, they don't, and I'll explain why. Regardless of the references that have been made via Ridley Scott, they are categorically owned by 2 completely different studios. And although Ridley Scott, directed the first one, didn't write it, directed the first Alien movie, and obviously, had a large hand in Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049, he doesn't own those properties. Blade Runner itself is an adaptation, a loose adaptation, but it's an adaptation nonetheless. He doesn't own the property, so no, they are not established in the same universe. First and foremost, mainly because they're owned by completely different bloody studios. So that's your answer there, straight away. This is just Ridley Scott, throwing his little connective tissue in there, but it doesn't mean anything, and I wouldn't hold any stock in that remotely. So there you go. That's my answer to that. But let's discuss 2012 Prometheus. Now, I think I'll do a quick review on this first, because I know exactly where I was at the time. And this movie meant a lot to me. This movie genuinely meant a lot to me. I watched this whilst I was living and working in Australia, of all places. I was in a place called Newtown in Sydney. Not that anyone needs to know this, and you're probably asleep by this pointless piece of information. But I watched this opening night, and after all of the hype for it, and I will say this, I quite like it. I genuinely quite like it. I get the complaints about the movie and the stupidity of certain characters, but nonetheless, I was entertained and I had a good time. And I think this movie as a standalone movie is good, but it falls apart because of its sequel. So this movie is what I would consider to be, we'll do a sexual reference now, it's foreplay. You know, it's the anticipation, it's the build-up, it's teasing all these things. An Alien Covenant should have been, I don't know, again, another reference, you know, it should have been intercourse, but unfortunately it wasn't. So as much as I like Prometheus, when we pair it with Alien Covenant, that's when I start to seriously question Prometheus as a product. So that's my brief review. Andre, what do you think of Prometheus?
I think that Prometheus is the movie that shows that Ridley Scott, as a director, has no business being a director unless he has someone else nailing a script for him in advance.
Oh dear, just shout all over my review then.
Because it's just a bunch of ideas, all of which have merit on their own, but they're thrown together into a pot where they don't make any sense. And then it's edited together in a way that's completely and utterly hopeless, which is why for Prometheus, to actually get an enjoyable experience out of it, you have to go to fan edits. Seriously, fan editors have done a 10 times as good a job assembling that movie based on the originally released footage as well as deleted scenes, and from there on they have recut the movie into something fairly enjoyable, certainly much more enjoyable than the theatrical cut. And I'm honestly surprised that there still hasn't been a director's cut or assembly cut or something like that officially released of Prometheus.
Yeah, don't give Ridley Scott ideas. The man that keeps, you know, rehashing.
If there is one movie that needs rehashing, it's this one, because it has two fundamental flaws outside of the editing. One is that it has some great ideas. Again, Graham Hancock, but it doesn't fully deliver on them. That's one problem. The other is that it doesn't fit at all into the Alien universe. On the contrary, it shrinks and retroactively destroys the Alien universe. Because now we know the story of the derelict and the creation of the aliens, and they were just around the corner all the time. These things that we are led in the first movie to believe is some ancient cosmic horror. We have no idea where they came from. Obviously, there has been some kind of contact, because the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, or whatever it was called in the first movie, they had some inkling that there would be something there. So there must have been something. There's some past history there that could have been developed into a prequel. That I admit completely. But then go into the whole creation of both humanity and the aliens and how closely they are linked. And it's just destroyed what the Prometheus could and should have been as a standalone movie, and it retroactively is damaging to the Alien movies as a whole. Now, that being said, because it's Ridley Scott, it looks absolutely fantastic. It's completely brilliantly shot. It's a beautiful looking movie. It has some great cast in it. But story-wise, it's just such a mess. And again, such a waste of opportunity. I prefer it to Alien versus Predator, but I have much the same criticisms of it. It could have been so much more than it was.
Oh, you've just belittled my review.
I'm sorry about that.
That's
fine.
My
review.
That's fine.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I'm kind of like I'm like in the middle.
It's saving grace for me, Tom. Come on.
I get what you're saying, and I get what Andre's saying, because I feel the same way about the movie. There's times where this movie is amazing and it's brilliant and it's all the things you could want out of a prequel to Alien, and then there's times where it's everything you don't want out of a prequel to Alien, and that's the stuff that Andre touched on too. And that's where I didn't like where they basically retconned the whole idea of, like he said, these were ancient. I would imagine the aliens were as they were because that's the way they were created by them to be a biological weapon. That's as I always
just
saw.
Evolved on their home world.
Either way, yeah, to where, and that's the thing, is they did introduce the idea that the alien will, it'll become a hybrid sort of with whatever it was that it, ingestated, or however you want to put it, to begin with. But in that sense, it's more or less not so much of what the alien is, other than it's what it's designed to do, and that is to be more adaptable to the environment, to know what it's killing, and know how to kill it, basically, and to become as resistant as it can to what it's killing. So that makes complete sense to me in every way. This just adds more questions than mystery to the whole thing, and by the end, you're just the third act just really gets off the rails, and that weird alien hybrid thing just kind of feels like Fox saying, no, you gotta have something here that ties it to aliens.
Yeah,
you have to.
Yeah, see, I agree with I agree with everything that but both of you have said. Undoubtedly, the Deacon, as it's known, due to its head shape, is absolutely shoehorned in. At the final moments, much in the same way, and perfect segue into Alien Covenant, that the alien is absolutely shoehorned in at the end of that film.
Yeah.
And it's so forced, you can definitely feel it. But yeah, I can't deny I was entertained by Prometheus. But Alien Covenant just ruins it without a shadow of a doubt.
Prometheus, like Andre said, is very visually. You can watch it. It's like, even though you don't know what the hell's going on, it's still visually stimulating enough to where you're kind of able to get through it. I don't know anybody who's ever just flat out just like said you can't, like, hasn't said at least one or two good things about it, even though they're trashing it, I guess. Is because even like Andre said, it's well filmed, and certain aspects of it, and it's got a great cast. I mean, and the story is there. There is a story there, but it, again, reeks of Ridley Scott coming in and not knowing because how many times during production did we hear, oh, it is an Alien prequel. Oh, it's not an Alien prequel. It has nothing to do with aliens. Well, maybe it does, but it doesn't.
Well, to be fair, though, that was Fox marketing.
And then, well, he did come out, I think, once or twice and flip-flop whether it was or wasn't.
Yeah, he did. He absolutely did. He
He
pulled a J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, I was following it there, and I'm like, what is it? And then the trailer comes out, and it's like, this is most definitely attached to Alien.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You can't tell me it's not.
The score used in that trailer.
Not just that, the original trailer is the exact same trailer as Alien.
Yeah. Let's shuffle on to something where I think we can
remaking Alien.
Yeah, let's shuffle on to something I think we can all agree on. Alien Covenant. So I think, interestingly enough, not interesting. I think a good exercise for this particular one. I think we can all say our review on the count of 3, and it's either going to be good or bad. So we'll say it in unison now, guys. All right. I know we didn't practice this off air. Yeah, we're just going to say good or bad. That's our review. But we'll say it on the count of 3. I'm sure we can. Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
Bad.
There you go. All right, then, fine.
But I was so looking forward to this movie.
Yeah, so was I. It's actually what started my channel, in fairness.
Oh, man, was I so looking forward to this movie.
Yeah, I think this is a film which I've sat on for a while, because I was at the world premiere of this movie, I think I gave it a good review at the start. I mean, it's not a good film. I don't know why I gave it a good review. We're entitled to change our opinions, right? That's, we are human. That's the world we live in.
It takes some time for a movie to digest and
I think I was super wrapped up in all of the marketing that was coming out, because the marketing for this film was fantastic. The marketing for the film was better than the film itself, because we had.
This is often the case.
Yeah, Yeah, true. But then there was all of the stuff in the marketing wasn't in the bloody final film anyway. You know, we had the crossing with Elizabeth Shaw's character. You know, the character of Elizabeth Shaw, along with David, Michael Fassbender. That wasn't in the movie. Again, fantastically put together. We could see. I mean, we saw the engineers in a flashback and things like that. So much good stuff was just lost, which they, and as well as been further expanded upon in expanded media, so in the novels and things like this. And I'm definitely of the firm belief that if a movie requires extra material to make that movie good, it's a bad movie. So yeah, I mean, Andre, Tom, your thoughts? You can duke it out for Alien Covenant.
Yeah. About Alien Covenant, I remember seeing it and being tremendously disappointed. You know how disappointing it was? I don't remember the movie now. I remember like some bits and pieces here and there. I remember like a fraction of a scene here. I remember a fraction of a scene there. But the whole movie's blank. It made that little impression on me. It was that disappointment. I've suppressed the whole thing.
What did you think of Discount Ripley?
There was oh yeah, thanks for reminding me. She was one of the things I'd completely and utterly
Catherine
forgotten.
Waterston. She was billed to be, again, folks, viewers of Talking Horror. Andre, Tom, you guys will both agree with me. Hollywood does this thing where they peg an actor as being the next best thing, the next big thing, and they hire them for every single project they can. And Catherine Waterston is one of those. And now, where is she? What is she doing? Nothing.
I guess that she's guest starring alongside Taylor Kitsch. That was one of those that was like poised to be like a
Jai
huge
Courtney.
star.
Yeah, Jai
And
Courtney,
what's
that's
his?
a good one.
He has.
Well, Jai
Suicide
Courtney's
Squad.
still working, so never mind.
Yeah.
What's his name?
So I'm trying to look for it. What's this other guy that was in everything and then he disappeared?
Terminator and
Sam Worthington.
Sam Worthington. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam Worthington.
Yeah, she's probably working next to them somewhere.
Yeah, awful. So what did you think of Discount Ripley then?
So I've forgotten her. I remember what she looked like from still pictures now that you mentioned it.
Yeah.
But did her husband die in the movie or something, or was dead or something like that?
Yeah.
That's literally all I remember. I remember nothing else of her.
Yeah.
So she was no Ripley.
Yeah.
No offense to Catherine Waterston or whatever she's called, but
no offense to what's her face. Oh dear, good lord, Tom. What are your thoughts, my man?
Oh, of all the movies besides maybe Requiem, AVP Requiem, this one pisses me off the most. And we said that, like I said, the sad part is I was so hyped for this movie. I'm like, this is gonna be it. This is gonna be Ridley giving us an alien movie we've wanted. The trailers were kick ass. And again, like you pointed out, this is the first time I think in history we ever had to go online to YouTube and watch videos that were deleted scenes to know what the hell was going on in the movie.
Yeah.
Well, not so much that, but just even know the characters or know what happened to characters from the last movie. Because half this movie is a Prometheus sequel, and the other half is just a generic remake of Alien. Yeah. Really. That's all it is. And it's not very good. And that's the sad part. You had the original guy there. Why did it turn out like this? It doesn't make much sense to me. I don't know, but I should have known from Prometheus. Prometheus should have told me what I do know now, and that is what you guys have been saying all along. Ridley Scott's a really good cinematographer and stuff like that, but he's not a storyteller.
No, he's never been a storyteller. The only good stories he's ever told have been the ones that have been told by others. When he has a script in front of him that he can follow to a T, the movie is going to be pretty looking, and if it's good or not, that's going to depend entirely on the script in front of him. My favorite example is, for instance, the original Alien. There was a script there. He struggled a bit in the editing, but there was a script, and the movie turned out great. Gladiator had a script, and the movie turned out great. The Martian had a script, and the movie turned out freaking fantastic. But here, he is the one devising the story to begin with. And he can't devise a story. He can come up with ideas, but then he needs someone else to assemble a script for him. And then he's had that, but then he's gone to the wrong people to assemble a script for him. And then he's the one who's editing the movie, trying to tell a story in the editing bay. But again, he's not an editor either, and he's not a storyteller. And then you get like 10 different edits, and not a single one of them makes sense.
Well, not just that, I'm
like,
sure he exerts his power too. Yeah.
Exactly. That's why you have like these separate 2 scenes were taken out that I remember, and they were released separately. So I actually was not that excited going into the movie. I remember that. I did not think
2 of the most important scenes.
Yeah.
That's what
exactly.
needs to be said.
Yeah. 2 of the most important scenes that the whole movie hinged on were not in the movie. You had to see them for yourself in order
you
for
had to
the
go on
movie
YouTube to find them.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that was the scene setting up who these people were and setting up what had happened with Dave and what's her name, Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Yeah, Elizabeth from Prometheus.
Yeah. Elizabeth Salander from Prometheus. Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah.
So I think
anyway,
I think to close and to kind of, well, it's not really close because we've still got to discuss it all, but moving on from here, you know, we're now in a really interesting time. So obviously, you know, today, Alien Day, when this episode is being released, the 40th anniversary of Alien, the 4th official celebration of Alien Day, but also the first ever time in history Alien is now under the control of Disney. So what does that mean for the franchise moving forwards? Now, a lot of people have speculated many times on this. There's been a lot of rumors and reports about TV shows. I myself have done a very extensive editorial, which I do believe the kind folks over at Midnight Sage will be linking. You can go check that out.
Just click the link right about now.
So yeah, you can go check that out for a very in-depth discussion with reference points, dates, absolutely everything you could possibly think discussed about this TV series. But just to condense it down into a quick consumable for you, TV show, no. It stemmed from a pitch. This is where the rumor stemmed from. It stemmed from a pitch that was then conflated into the pitch, got turned into development, and then it just went out of control from there. Now under Disney, Deadline recently reported that Fox will only be able to produce 4 movies per year and also 4 streaming products as well. So unfortunately, obviously, you know, as we've been discussing and doing our micro reviews of the, you know, of the series, we didn't discuss the box office, but our reaction is indicative of what the box office was as well. And the box office has been on a very steady decline, so it's incredibly unlikely that Disney will then, you know, allow Fox, give them the green light to produce a TV show or even a movie for some time. But I think it does open the floor for an interesting discussion. Now, you know, between Andre and Tom, what are your thoughts on Disney handling the Alien franchise, and what are your hopes? What do you think is going to be the future of the franchise?
Well, one thing is what I would like to see happen, and the other is what I think is going to happen and what I fear is going to happen. To begin with the bright side, Fox had already mismanaged the property so bad that it was completely dead at Fox. It was not going to be resurrected anytime soon. So the closest shot that it has to being brought back in the future at some point is under the wing of another company. It's not going to be a high priority because, again, the last movie, Covenant, that was a franchise ender right there at the box office. In the future, maybe, it's a brand, and Disney is all about brands. I would not be surprised if they do something for Hulu, that they make some direct to Hulu movies, because an Alien movie doesn't have to be very expensive. Of course, it's going to be pricey, but it doesn't have to be like this 150 million thing. You can go far with 50 million making a decent Alien movie. And what I would like to see happen is something along the lines of Neil Blomkamp's aborted Alien 5, which was, from what I gather, really Alien 3, version 2, the movie that we should have gotten all along. I would have been very, very happy with that, with something that allows the first 2 movies, the good ones, to be canon, and then you can assign 3, 4, everything before and after to the scrap heap, and you can start over, or rather continue from the first 2. Continue from Alien 3. Do something along the lines of what Blomkamp was doing, or maybe even do a straight adaptation of the Dark Horse Alien vs. Predator comics. I'd be very happy with that.
Yeah, likewise. I think you raise a very good point there. Tom, what do you think?
Well, continuing off of what Andre kind of set up and doing what we do here at Midnight's Edge, basically the only movies in the Alien franchise to really not make any money were Resurrection and the last one. And to be clear, there's no real reason these movies should be anything more than a $50 to $100 million complete box office anyway, other than the fact that you have Sigourney Weaver or Ridley Scott involved in them. And that's something I think we really saw from like the AVP franchise and some of the other things that they've tried to do since then with Ridley Scott. And unfortunately, most of the fans are like, we've had enough of Ridley Scott trying to do this. Let's move on with something else. And what Andre's saying, the Blomkamp idea would be ideally what most people would want, but there's reason to believe that Ridley Scott might be digging in his claws. Is that right, Mr. H?
Yeah, he even appropriated the name. Alien Awakening was actually the name of Alien 5, believe it or not. Neil Blomkamp is obviously being an incredible professional about it and does not wish to discuss it. But you can read between the lines, when you've got Sigourney Weaver, James Cameron, and Neil Blomkamp all saying that there was a script. There was even evidence to support the fact that they were even hunting for locations. So they were very close to actual, production start date. And then Ridley Scott, the only one that turns around and says, "Nah, there's no script." Read between the lines, he called it to a close for sure.
And he didn't do any of us any favors in so doing. There's also another thing that needs to be addressed here, because the previous movie, it was a complete and total box office bomb. And we can talk about Sigourney Weaver returning and all of that, but how big a box office draw is that?
Oh, it's not at all.
Exactly, that's what I mean. I think the first thing that Disney needs to understand is that Alien is not the Avengers.
Yeah.
It's not
right, and that's what I was getting to.
It's not even Thor. Yeah. Hell, it's barely Ant-Man. And I honestly, really
the only way you're going to make $100 million or more anymore with an Alien movie is if you do the Blomkamp thing, and that's just because you'll get a lot of these other people back from the old movies.
I don't think you're going to do $100 million even then. I don't think
you could if it's good. If it's good, you could, because Prometheus did over 130 in the U.S.
Prometheus did 400 million worldwide. That was amazing.
There is enough. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So there's enough of an audience there, I think. But I think the problem is really that people are just so played out on this franchise, and they've been so fucked around.
An audience, but is there now?
If you do the Blomkamp thing, yes, but I think Ridley Scott, and we're kind of getting into like speculatory stuff here, but it's the truth to a point, is really the one who's cock blocking this thing.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that's really going to bring it back. Otherwise, it's dead. You might as well just put it in with like other slasher movies franchises, because there's no way you're ever going to make more than $40 million at the box office with an Alien movie after this. It's just not going to happen.
And that is why I say that they need to keep the budget in check. Do something for like 40-50 million tops and put it on Hulu, which is co-owned now by Disney and Comcast. Everyone else has been bought out. So that's going to be like their more adult Disney stuff are going to be put on Comcast, on Hulu. And I think that's probably
if you did an Alien series,
genre things.
Yeah, if you did an Alien series of the Blomkamp idea with Sigourney Weaver on board, you could possibly have something that's as popular, or even more popular, actually. It would be more popular than Cobra Kai. And it could work.
Or a proper Dark Horse adaptation, or a proper adaptation. Seriously, think about it.
No. It's just
adaptation
callback,
of Dark Horse's Alien versus Predator spread over 10 episodes. How freaking
that I'd be on
could that
board
not
with
be?
too. But that's just it. Would they do it? That's the thing. They're gonna.
That's what I doubt.
Probably not.
As Mr. H was kind of bringing up before we got into the podcast, it's like, how much are they going to get away with, and how much is Ridley Scott really intent on continuing the series if Disney is going forward, and how much are they going to let him do?
Well, I mean,
what power does he have though?
Hey. He's Ridley Scott. That's the thing.
The thing is, he's
a
definitely
director who has a really crap box office record behind him.
To us,
past 80.
But it's the name.
It's the name. Yeah.
And also as well, you only have to look at the comments, which are inevitably down below, hating on you for hating on Ridley Scott, because it's the name, and it's what the name instills in people. It instills confidence, because people don't see Ridley Scott's shit movies. They don't see that. They just see his good ones. And that's the problem.
Well, not only that, we've said it. Even the worst of his movies look good.
Yeah.
And they're interesting to watch. You can't deny that. And that's the problem.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, he is
a cinematographer.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, he is going to continue. He is positioning himself with Disney now. He's working on the Merlin saga. In fact, he did that directly just before the announcement of Disney's hopes to buy Fox. So he is positioning himself favorably with Disney. He wants to continue it. There was some misreporting from Deadline. Deadline kind of teased that he may still be working on an Alien movie, but it's not the case. In fact, it's like people blew it way out of proportion. It's like a tiny segment of an article. He is categorically working on other projects. I highly doubt we're going to see a return to the Alien franchise for some time, sadly. Like I say, the report that everyone is using to look favorably upon the continuation of the franchise also stipulates that Fox can only produce 4 movies per year and 4 streaming services. So you can't, let's not cherry pick segments of an article to kind of bolster your argument whilst also ignoring the others. The other part to the argument clearly indicates that the likelihood of them continuing Alien is quite low at this point in time. With a production of only 4 movies per year, is one of them going to be Alien? No, it's so unlikely. A lot of people say that Alien Covenant didn't lose money or actually made money. No, wrong. One thing which most people might not be aware of, but I'm sure you guys are, Andre and Tom.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that, yes, you have your production budget. Alien Covenant had a production budget of about 100 million, came in just under, so about 98 or so. Production budget also has to take into account the marketing budget on top of it, which is generally speaking, industry standard, the same as the production budget. And that's standard marketing. Alien Covenant did not have standard marketing. Right. It was fucking everywhere.
And people also don't.
We're talking a loss upwards of 100 million.
Yeah, people don't equate in there
upwards of that.
Yeah, so
don't
please go.
No, I'm sorry.
So
I was just saying, people don't equate like the cost. The theaters keep at least half of the money most of the time after the first weekend.
Exactly. So for everyone that thinks
people have
Alien
points
Covenant,
and everything else, producers, directors, and everything else, so that money does not just stay in the factory. It goes out the door as fast as it comes in. Yeah.
So for everyone that thinks Alien Covenant made money, let's just use the very standard and actually the lowball figures that the industry use. So let's say 98 million or 100 million. Let's round it up, just a small fraction. Production budget. Same amount, and this is lowballing its marketing figure. Another 100 million for its marketing budget, right? And again, that's lowballing it, because no one can deny that it wasn't everywhere, because it was. So that's 200 million. And it made what? 240 million worldwide? It's not, I mean, what are we looking at now? 40 million. Let's take that. And again, this is all lowballing. So 40 million, that's still not profit. Right? We then got the theatre cost, so let's take off 50% of that. We've got 20 million. Now we're going into the tens of millions that this movie actually earned.
And you're actually still being generous because
being massively generous.
Because foreign, they only get a very small percentage in certain areas and stuff like that too.
Oh yeah. So for anyone that thinks Alien Covenant was a success, you only have to start to really pick apart, the budgets to show why it's incredibly likely that Disney is going to put Alien on hiatus. And again, don't take my word for it. What did they do with Solo? A movie which made, what was it, like 400 odd million? Or something, quite a large amount of money. Still, they put that on, they put all of that on ice. Disney's very, very quick to put things on ice when it doesn't, meet anywhere near the amount of money that they want it to. And Alien is a huge risk. So it's going to be on ice for a little while. In my opinion, I think it will. I don't want it to be, but I think it will. I think it's just business sense. Anyone that's a businessman would agree with that. It is not going to be retired though, because it's a franchise which historically has made a lot of money. So it has the potential from a business perspective to make that again. So Disney will want to mine that, but they won't want to do it without a very heavily calculated investment.
I just hope that they manage that better than they have done Star Wars.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Goddamn. Yeah. Oh dear. So I think it's important now. I think we're kind of drawing to a natural close here. Episode 2, talking horror. Would love to hear all of your thoughts though, down below in the comment section on all of this. I know I'm kind of just hijacking it right now, but
but tell people where they can find you.
Reaching out to you all, so please do leave everything down below. But I'll hand it back over to Tom now to bring us to a close, because obviously...
No, absolutely. Of course, tell everybody where they can find you, because you have a lot of reporting on things like Alien and other horror and sci-fi franchises. So tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, well, I mean, just Mr. H Reviews over on the Tube, on YouTube. And I am, bizarrely enough, I am actually on Twitter and Instagram at Mr. H Reviews. So you can find me over on there as well.
Excellent coverage, excellent editorials, and of course we can't thank you enough for hanging out with us here on the Talking Horror podcast.
Thank you.
Isn't that right, Andre?
Yes, absolutely. We're very grateful to have you here, and we're very grateful to all of you that came to check this out and to listen to us. So be sure to subscribe and to share the video with all your friends who you think might like this.
Absolutely. So once again, for Midnight's Edge and Mr. H, I'm Tom Connors, and thanks for joining us.